some leaky abstraction that's happening there. You look for things like that. You also look for informal communication paths that are happening inside the organization. You're trying to figure out who's talking to who on a regular basis to get stuff moving or get stuff done, and then you're starting to figure out, okay, hang on a second, there's a bespoke kind of formal communication path that's happening over here via Jira or GitHub or something else, and then actually it's these three people over here who are moving all of the stuff behind the scenes or whatnot. Figure out what that looks like and start to organize around that. Yeah. Yeah, so lightweight planning. OKRs is one from Google, is pretty famous. The other one is V2MOM. I was at Salesforce, and that was Salesforce alignment tool. These are all called alignment tools. And V2MOM is one that Salesforce used, and I think it was actually started by Mark Benioff and Parker Harris when they founded the company. V2MOM is visions, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. It's just what we're trying to do, what we're going to value in this process, how we're going to measure it, what we think will stop us from getting there, and what it's going to take to achieve it. I'm a fan of any alignment tool. I'll say that in general. I don't think it's worth hashing over which one's the best. Pick one and go. That said, I actually prefer V2MOM than OKRs. I think it's a personal preference, but I'm not going to stop anyone from using one. I do believe in them though. I was a huge skeptic when I came to Salesforce and I saw V2MOM. I'm like, what is this? And about 2 years in, I was like, okay, all right, I was wrong.
I was wondering if you could speak a bit more about emergent leadership. How do you recognize that? How that emerging in that emerging organization? Promote these people. I mean, what is like the
So the question was how one might recognize emergent leadership, and then what would happen in a situation like that. So I think a context matters. If you're asking the question to say, how do I demonstrate leadership potential to folks around me is one, versus from my context, how I might recognize it. I'll answer that the second, and then I'll get to the first two, assuming. How you might recognize it. I like to say that in most organizations, truth on the ground is something that should be ratified in most contexts. So usually, like I said before about all the dependencies to get projects done, that's truth on the ground. Figure out what the truth on the ground is and make that a team. Leaders in organizations, you typically see before they take on their first leadership role. So you're looking for those, and you're looking for the people who have not potential. I don't like to go on potential. That's like one of those things that's really hard to judge and kind of fraught with bias, to be frank. I like to say that someone's typically doing a job already and they just don't know it. So I was doing VP jobs for about a year before I became a VP, but it was just because the context called for it. Most people end up managing before they get the title of manager. They just are doing it under a team lead or organizational principle dynamic where they're helping a project get done and making sure that people on the team are working well together. So I'm looking for those people in the organization who are effectively driving the projects. In an alignment tool, we'll talk about V2MOM a second ago and OKRs. A lot of the leaders in organizations tend to be the ones that regularly are carrying after things that are either on the OKR or V2MOM or making sure that those things are done and filled out because they're the ones who care most about the organization or where the organization's going and what's important to them. On the flip side would be how one might demonstrate that. Again, context matters because leadership skills or leadership traits, I should say, inside a place like Oracle would be very different than one I might value or some other places where it might be more cutthroat as well. In how to demonstrate them is understand what your company or context values for leadership skills and traits. But if you want to generally, you're getting stuff done, you're pushing the ball forward, you're helping people be better versions of themselves, whether they know it or not, and you're doing it in a way that everyone kind of maybe almost doesn't even recognize is happening. It's softening this comment over here, or it's diffusing that situation before it becomes a situation, things like that. You see that two people are kind of talking past each other. You help contact by providing context that they are both either lacking or too stubborn in the moment to admit, and you do it. One of the traits I value most in leadership is someone who is willing to kind of humble themselves and defer and deflect from themselves for the betterment of the situation. So a lot of people will fall on their own sword in some manner, not in terms of like sacrificing themselves, but saying like, the thing I care about in the moment doesn't matter so long as like the entirety of this thing moves forward.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Sorry, I can't hear it. What was that?
In one of your slides, you talked about individuals being either librarians or poets.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, in an organizational context, are you saying that there should be a specific proportion of each, or do you monitor it at all? That what you might do, or
Yeah, so the question was to the librarians and poets slide before, do I think that maybe there should be some proportion, a ratio, and do I monitor it? No, not at all. It's more of a contextual thing. I'd like to understand what the context might call for or what an individual might be, but also understand what the situation might demand too. You walk into a very, very undisciplined, unstructured, underperforming team, and you're talking about aspirational things 5 years out as a poet or something like this, probably not going to go over that well. It actually might demand a more rigorous librarian, methodical approach. Like, we need to shore up this, we need to put this system in place, we need to kind of like push these things around because we're so all over the place, we don't really know what's going on. So just kind of understand the context of those things. It's more just, it's situational dependent, and that was a broad spectrum framing that I've found some success with.
Okay, this will be the last one over here.
So, this is more a general observation. See, especially after the days of Facebook, Google, and all these, now there is not much value for management and leadership, I feel. Because the first thing people ask is, can you code? Can you be a coder? Can you like, being hands-on? But, there's only 24 hours in a day. You can do some of that, and that's how you would have grown up. But the point is, as a manager, as a leader, you are, spending the most valuable resources at your, disposal. So the way you actually motivate them and get it is very important. But somehow I see, especially the young startups, and they just don't give a damn for people who bring in that kind of leadership and mentorship. Those seem to be more fancy words than the first question is, Kafka and can you code, right? So somewhere I think the valley has lost the HP way and the traditional, which is really needed. And somewhere we have drifted into a bunch of coders called as managers. I mean, is that a thought?
So everyone heard that? I don't need to repeat that one. He projected pretty well. So I think that again, context probably matters in that case. I would say and agree with you in a 0 to 10 startup. That's true. I would also say that I believe that to be true in spots at larger organizations, and the truth be, in my opinion, that if you ever run into an organization over 50 that does think that way, you just run away. Because what's going to happen is that they're going to fail spectacularly at some point. And it might not be until 200, it might not be until 700, but there will be a buzzsaw coming. And you could even have some fun while it's going on. But I don't know why we in tech struggle with this one. Sports, it's really obvious the value of leadership. Bill Belichick cannot, I guarantee you Bill Belichick, the coach of the New England Patriots, cannot throw a pass more than 5 yards. And yet, somehow he's one of the most brilliant offensive minds in all of NFL football. And one of the greatest coaches ever. It's no question that a 65-year-old can really run that organization and lead it. And yet somehow in tech, we're like, if you can't code, you're not worth your weight and whatever. I don't understand how that's lost.
But people talk about flat organizations, right? See, the fact is, the people like the Google, Facebook of the world recently, it's a complete flat organization. There is no management structure, and obviously they have been very successful. So the general mantra now feels like, all this is really fluff. You don't really need this. You need to be coding, and that's how you're a leader.
I'm not sure about Facebook and Google. Facebook and Google are pretty famous for having some structure. Some of the more famous flat organizations, I think the Zappos is one. But I encourage anyone who is interested in flat organizations, and I know you're not, but I encourage anyone who's interested in it to go read, I think it's a 1970s paper called The Tyranny of the Structuralists, which is that in any organization that deems itself flat or structureless, what will happen is there will become power structures. It's human nature. Lord of the Flies is literally a book that was written as like, do not do this.
The current White House.
This is true. But it's, in any sort of system like that, you're going to have some sort of, not hierarchy, might be the wrong word, but you're going to have some people, some emergent leaders that can get that done. And if you say, hey, we're a flat organization, you could literally roll your desk over and work on whatever project you want to work on. I guarantee you it'll feel a lot like a high school clique inside there. And I think the other one's Valve. Valve's another one that is very famous for this. And if you go read about Valve's reviews online or whatever, I mean, if you made it there, you were an in crowd. If you didn't make it, you're like, this is one of the worst places to work. If you're not buddies, if you don't know how to work the angles and whatnot, you can't get anything done. And to me, that's exactly the opposite of what this is about, this whole thing. And I would welcome a conversation with anyone who is trying to put a flat organization in there, particularly one at scale. And
I want to build on that just a little bit. As I kind of, as a manager of coders, I still do some coding myself on the hand on. But your main goal is to remove the obstacles for the people who are doing the job. They need a resource, the resource is down, and you work on it for them so they can just get back to work and do what they want to do, which is code. So that's where you need the manager from. And it may not be a manager, that's the that.
Okay, so I studied this a lot, and I want you to know that structureless doesn't mean no structure. It means that your name is not permanently attached to any structural hierarchy. So think about a big fish net where every little knot that's tied is a person, and if you pick that fish net up, there's going to be a temporary structure, but that will relax back down, and you may be a leader on this project, a core team member on that project, and a supporting member on the other. So the thing that people don't like about that is you don't get to climb the corporate ladder, which is completely irrelevant. But those kinds of organizations do exist. They've existed for many years, and they work. It's just that there's a structure that's not associated with your position or title.
And with that,
I think that's it.
we have to.
Thank you.
Thank Jason. Thank you very much.
Thank you.